So I'm joined by the fantastic Chris Goss of Masters of Reality. Long storied career with this guy. He's had an amazing career that I'm just genuinely in awe of.
All right. So yeah, the long storied career. Yeah. Okay. What do you need to know, buddy?
So you've had that long storied career. Like I would love to know like where it all started. It was Masters of Reality was I think 1981, but you've been playing so much longer than that. Where did it all start for you?
1964. Beatles. I was 6 years old, and I was just thrilled by the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. Um, in fact, when I was alone, I had Out of Our Heads was the first album I got by the Rolling Stones. My aunts bought it for me. They asked me, they said, okay, you can have six 45s or one album. They brought me to a five and dime at the time, and albums were probably 2.98 and 45s were probably 39 cents. And so I said, yeah, I want the album. And, Out of Our Heads, the Rolling Stones, Brian Jones on the cover. And I loved Brian, his bangs and his vibe, even for a little boy, were just, it was so impressive. And the other hero was John Lennon. And the two of them. I remember one day at that age with my Beatles singles. The first single I got, I believe, was Hard Day's Night, and I Should Have Known Better. Um, and which was the result of me having a go-kart accident and, and falling off the go-kart and tumbling down a hill and getting a stone stuck in my elbow, and that they had to get out at the emergency room. And because I was such a brave little boy, when they took me to the emergency room, they said, okay, we can buy you a Beatles record when on the way home because you were so brave. And there we go. And so I picked out my 45, and then accumulated the other Beatles 45s at the time. And anyway, one day I did uh, an imaginary live broadcast of the Stones and the Beatles doing a show that was being broadcasted around the world, and this was on my little record player in my room. And I would play a few Beatles songs, and then I'd use one of my dad's records for the break music. Kind of almost like a soft jazzy music kind of music that would be played for the audience before the Rolling Stones came on, and then play some songs from Out of Our Heads, and then another break, and then some more Beatle 45s. So it was my first live aid in 1964. Yeah, that's where it started for me.
Cool. Now let's talk the new record. It's an absolutely, but it's so good. I've been thoroughly enjoying it. Where did the name The Archer come from? What was the decision to call it the title track?
Oh, the original title was not The Archer, and not the title I originally wanted to use. But as will be, a friend of mine from back east surprised me with a photograph she texted me of the eclipse last year. And I wanted a grainy black and white cover for the album for a while. And I'm a big black and white movie fan. And that's how I felt this record, was. But anyway, so I get this picture of the eclipse, and well, that's the cover. It looked great, and she was thrilled. And anyway, so the that eclipse, uh, it I had was working on the title song, and there it was, and because there's mythology about archers shooting at the sun and the moon for whatever reason, and um, and so that's the story of the title and the cover, and the title track is kind of a summation of that 13 years of downtime almost. I mean, we did a few tours in there, and watching the world and the profound changes that have gone on in the world in the last 15, 20 years, and whether some people realize it or not, the effects of those changes on us all. And it goes pretty deep. I mean, they've reached our DNA now, and so that's the story, I guess.
Cool. Now, it's been, I think you've sort of touched on this already. It's been like 13, 16 years, something like that, since the last album, last
Yeah.
Masters of Realities album. This is, I think, the longest period of time between any of your records. Um, can I ask, what made you decide I'm going to get another record produced at this time? What was the driving force behind that?
I think having something to say, and not just do an obligatory riff record.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, um, we need artists. Well, anyway, I don't know if this is a real statement or correct or not, but maybe it should be a reflection back at the world. What the world's given the artist has to give back in their way to, to define what's real. I think, you know, um, Francis Bacon put it that way, and you know, sharpening the reality, and so that's it. Watching what went down and not knowing how to respond. Like, does the world need another stoner rock riff record at this time? I mean, there are a lot of impressive heavy bands out there now, and I love heavy music. And but I just felt like, no, I mean, that isn't how I feel what I should be presenting. And then the Archer, you know, um, I mean, it's almost, as I said, it's kind of the ruler of fate. Whatever hits you in this life, all of us personally, have an archer, and whatever he throws at you, you have to deal with. And so, that's it.
Cool. Now, I've already mentioned like your this record kind of puts me into a really beautiful trance when I'm listening to it. Um, Now, do you actually have a personal favorite track off this record, one that you're particularly proud of?
Um, Not really. I mean, it, it's something that time, especially if you've made it, yourself, having a perspective on it is really hard, and until it's 5 years later at least, to look back and go, what the fuck was I thinking, and what was I doing? And it's a weird world, getting lost in it all, and kind of like tumbling through it all for me, and for everybody, I think, who has a brain, and is creating something to present to the world. I think it should be personal, and not just obligatory. And we need to do heavy riffs again, because that's what we're known for. But yeah, there's not much of that on this record, because like I said, there's a lot of that going on. And being the terrible businessman that I am, historically, I tend to not do what everyone's doing, and to my demise. But anyway, yeah, a long time. I regret that in a way that, a decade of my life going by without giving any new music. And, and as you get older, the years get shorter and the time left gets shorter. So it becomes a race. So this horse wasn't in the race for a while. And until I felt I had something to run for. It's true. That's the only thing I'm proud of is the truth of it.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I see so many bands that just put out album after album after album. I think if you give yourself time to actually have that creative process, you're gonna come up with something that is, you know, absolutely incredible, like this record. Now, I want to sort of ask about, over the years, we've actually seen formats of music, change. We've gone from records, tapes, CDs, and digital. Is there a particular format that you particularly loved or you prefer out of all of the ways we can consume music?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the vinyl era, I mean, and I think everyone's realizing that. Um, Digital has been a curse. I think the bad outweighs the good enormously in the recording process and in the delivery process. I mean, yeah, great. I mean, you get on the phone and listen to an album by anyone you want and any music you want to hear from around the world with just pressing a few buttons. But um, the that process has eliminated a lot of pleasure of going to a record store and being excited about a new album coming out and having it in your hands and looking at the cover and almost quivering with excitement and that you have it in your hand and now it's so so mundane of a process and it's changed the recording technique as well to the bad and the preciousness of when the tape was rolling and you had like two tracks left to do vocals on and every take meant the world and a nuclear explosion could go off and you didn't give a fuck, it was like no, this is it, this man's performing. And now, you have a chance to keep 78 takes and then choose one later. It's been a detriment. And the attention span of everyone in the studio has been affected. Bands are looking at their phone and social media instead of paying attention what's going on. Even the rewind time, when you rewound the tape in the studio recording on tape, that was like a 2-minute period where of silence almost, just the tape recorder rewinding where melodies could enter your head or a harmony could enter your head. It was like a break in the music that was an opportunity for the door, for your antenna to catch things. Music's in the air, man. I mean, and if I think the musician who's worth his salt knows that and has his antennas up and is open to receiving it. So, I mean, it's almost like not taking credit for the music. I mean, it comes to you. And so, in dreams and in the air every minute of the day, it's out there. And I've actually experienced, where if I didn't use an idea or a lyric, I'll hear it a year or two later down the line, someone else using it, thinking, okay, they caught that one and I didn't use it, motherfucker. And, I don't even remember what the question was. It's pretty deep, man. It goes a long
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. So, do you think, like, based on what you've said, that the actual physical release of an album or a single, do you think that's becoming a dying breed as a result of streaming and the services and how we consume music now? Or do you think it's, it's still got a chance to survive?
I think the only way it's going to survive is after everything doesn't survive. It's almost like everything needs to be leveled before it'll ever reach that point of innocence again. Because it was naivety and innocence, and that allowed that creativity to flow in the past. And, I mean, of course, there were pressure on everyone all throughout this, decrepit business. But, there, it's, it's different, man. You know what I mean? Like, they've taken away. I mean, you had it was like a club of fans that you had when you were a fan of music, and now I was stuck in a mobile phone store last night for hours getting a new telephone and problems with my email, which I still have. But anyway, the music that was playing, if you're in Starbucks or a phone store, I wanted to kill myself. I mean, and I saw the employees kind of like, bopping their head to this music that was computerized. Obviously, the vocal arrangement had been like chopped up and repeated and put into place, and the horrible non-melody of it. And I would, it was just horrid. And that's how I feel when I'm in an atmosphere like that. That like, wow, it's just it's not music. There's no soul or intent in it. It's not trying to do anything but sell itself in a really bad way. And so, yeah, it's changed on so many records. I mean, I think that line in The Archer, "Now the music ain't right, lost its way outside the night." Um, and yeah, that's it.
Do you know, I really can relate to like I remember when the last record store in my town shut down and I kind of felt like I got forced into the digital generation completely unwillingly, which was kind of a shame. And yes, I could still order a CD from Amazon, but it wasn't the same as actually spending time in that store. Now, I've already mentioned you've had a long storied career and you've spent times producing records for bands like Queens of the Stone Age and Kyuss. What was it like working with those guys? What was it like working with the likes of Josh Home?
Now, Caius was so young, and what they did was so great. I mean,
Yeah.
I got to see their first show in Los Angeles. They were in the desert, and I wasn't in the desert at the time, but here's this band from the desert that my wife got a copy of the cassette, and she really liked it and played it over and over again. At first, I didn't, pay much attention. It started to grow on me, and then we heard they were playing in Los Angeles at a tiny little bar, and so in Hollywood. And we went to the show. There were probably five people there. And this is when Chris Cockrell was playing bass for them, their original bassist. Um, and I was stunned. They immediately became my new favorite band, in a minute. They were tuned down low, and at the time, heavy music had become staccato, like Metallica and Megadeth, bless their hearts. But, I never related to music that was like typing, like, like I always looked for something that flowed, like, and swung in a slow, erotic way, I think, and so here was this band of 17-year-olds, not even 18, I don't think, uh, playing heavy music correctly. and it just the sound wave in front of the stage at the low end, and the power of the riffs, and Brant Bjork was swinging like a motherfucker on the drums. It was, wow. This is wonderful. Someone's doing it right. There's hope, and which is why I stepped in and thought, okay, if when the music business, someone in the music business hears this, they're going to sign it, and maybe assign it to some producer that's going to, like, okay, you guys got to tune up, and let's make this tighter, and because Kyuss wasn't tight in that tight kind of way, and I could see a producer, tricking them into ruining it, and I I never had ambitions of being a rock and roll producer, but that was like an obligation to make sure that no one stepped in and fucking ruined it. And at the time, I was very fearful of that. And this was 1990. I was in the middle of having Ginger Baker in my band, and I was a little golden boy in Hollywood at the time, and doing okay. And then this band comes along, and of young kids who are like showing me how to do it again. And I didn't want anyone to ruin it and touch it. So that's why I stepped in and said, I want to produce you. And that was easy, just, throwing microphones up and letting them go, at the right studio with the right board and recording on tape at the time, all the ideal conditions. And they were playful and happy, and it's high energy, wonderful, wonderful time. It was just laughs, the way music should be made. And, even before that, when I was making the first album with Masters of Reality, Keith Richards was mixing his Talk Is Cheap, his first solo record, at the same time at Atlantic Studios in New York. And around seven, and my band wasn't getting along at the time. And so, my first album was miserable to make, and I'd hear Keith and the band, his band, Waddy Wachtel and Steve Jordan, arriving in the elevator coming up to the second floor at Atlantic Studios. I'd hear laughter in the elevator. And the door would open, and you could tell they just had dinner and some drinks, and their arms around each other's shoulders and laughing like. And meantime, my sessions were like a funeral, and I saw Keith and his band thinking, that's the way you do this. That's the way you should feel when you enter the studio. And so just a lesson and observation of someone enjoying themselves. And yeah, that was, I don't know if that gets anywhere near answering what you asked, but that was kind of a profound moment for me.
Yeah. No, that was, that was incredible. Just a fantastic story about that sort of situation. Now, honestly, I could sit here and listen to you tell stories for an absolute eternity, but I am going to have to let you go because I know you're a busy man, and Zoom is telling me unless I can wrap it up soon, it's going to cut me off. But Chris, I want to thank you so much for taking time out to chat to me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. The Archer is out. When is it out? I did have that up a second ago. That's very soon.
Digital release is this Friday, the 28th,
That's
and
it. Yeah.
all the other formats on April 11th.
Amazing. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you too, man. Have a great day
You
or
too.
great night. Bye bye.